You too, and good morning, brothers and sisters in the Dhamma. Once again, welcome to the weekly Sunday Pūjā and Unison and Dhamma Sharing Online, an initiative of Theravada Buddhist Council of Malaysia and is hosted by Māgha Buddhist Society and Dhammacakka Buddhist Vihara, Melaka. It's certainly good to see all of you once again on this online platform. We would like to extend great welcome to all new viewers to this channel. Today is the 5th of February 2023, and we would like to wish everyone a happy 𝓤𝓾𝓷𝓭𝓪 and happy Thai Pusam for those celebrating it. And may we all be safe and healthy. To begin today's puja, I shall pass the mic over to Sister Lily to read out the offerings in English. Over to you, Sister Lily.
Thank you, Brother Terence. A very good morning to all brothers and sisters in the Dhamma. May I wish you well and a happy 𝓤𝓾𝓷𝓭𝓪 to all celebrating Chinese New Year, and happy Thai Pusam for those celebrating Thai Pusam this year. Before we begin our Sunday Pūjā, let's focus our minds and reflect on the significance of the offerings that we shall make virtually to the Buddha, our blessed teacher. Offering of lights. May we offer these candles burning brightly out of deep respect and veneration to our enlightened master, the Buddha. May these lights symbolically guide us to the light of the Dhamma, which dispels the darkness of greed with the light of generosity, the gloominess of hatred with the light of love, and the darkness of ignorance with the light of wisdom through the Buddha, Dhamma, and Sangha. Offering of joss sticks and incense. May we offer these joss sticks and incense out of deep respect and veneration to our blessed master, the Buddha. May the fragrance of these joss sticks and incense be pleasing unto the gods and devas. May our good deeds be like the fragrance of these joss sticks, cultivating compassion, patience, tolerance, understanding, and love towards all living beings. Offering of water. May we offer this glass of clean water to symbolize our aspiration to cultivate the virtues of calmness, clarity, and purity. Let it remind us to diligently cleanse ourselves of our spiritual defilements and delusion through the cultivation of generosity, compassion, and wisdom. Offering of flowers. These flowers too we offer out of deep respect and gratitude to our compassionate master, the Buddha. These flowers, sweet, beautiful, and choice, are clustered at the feet of our noble master. Beautiful as they are now, they will soon, with passing of time, wilt and fade and be cast away. Reflecting thus on this very nature of unsatisfactoriness, impermanence, and soullessness, let us tread the path shown by the Buddha for the eradication of sufferings here and now. Dear brothers and sisters, let's continue to compose our minds and give our highest salutations to the Buddha, Dhamma, and Sangha by saying sadhu 3 times. Sadhu, sadhu, sadhu. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Buddhang saranang gacchami. Dhammang saranang gacchami, Sanghang saranang gacchami, Dutiyampi buddhang saranang gacchami. Dutiyampi dhammang saranang gacchami. Dutiyampi sanghang saranang gacchami. Tatiyampi buddhang saranang gacchami. Tatiyampi dhammang saranang gacchami. Tatiyampi sanghang saranang gacchami. Panatipata veramani sikkhapadang samadhiyami. Adinādāna veramani sikkhapadang samadhiyami. Kāmesu micchācara veramani sikkhapadang samadhiyami. Musāvādā veramani sikkhapadang samadhiyami. Surameraya majjapamadattana veramani sikkhapadang samadhiyami. Itipiso bhagava arahang samma sambuddho viccacarana sampanno sugato lokavidu anuttaro purisa dhammasarati satta dewa manussanang buddho bhagavati. Swakato bhagavata dhammo sandittiko akaliko ehipastiko opanayiko paccatang vedittabbo vinyohiti. Supatipanno bhagavato sāvaka sangho Ujupatipanno bhagavato sāvaka sangho. Nyāyapatipanno bhagavato sāvaka sangho. Samiccippatipanno bhagavato sāvaka sangho. Yadidang cattari purisa yugani atta purisa puggala. Esa bhagavato sāvaka sangho ahuneyo pahuneyo dakkineyo anjali karaniyo anuttarang punyakhetang lokassati.
Mundami cetiyang sabbang sabbatanesu patititang 𝓢𝓾𝓷𝓭𝓪 𝓟𝓾𝓷𝓫 𝓢𝓾𝓷𝓵 yasamule nisinnovā sabbari vijaya akka patto sabbanyuttang satta vanditang bodhipadapang ime ete mahabodhi 𝓢𝓾𝓷𝓵 pujita ahang pite namasami bodhi raja namantu te 𝓤𝓷𝓲𝓼𝓸𝓷 dipena tamadansina 𝓤𝓾𝓷𝓭𝓪 sambuddhang pujayami tamonudang ganda sambara yuttena dupena hang sugandhina pujaye pujaniyantang puja bhajana muttamang adivasetu no bante Paniyang parikapitang anukang pang upadaya patigang hatumuttamang adivase tuno bante bojanang parikapitang anukang pang upadaya patigang hatumuttamang adivase tuno bante gilana paccayang imang anukang pang upadaya patigang hatumuttamang vanaganda guno petang etang kusuma santating pujayami munindasa sripada saroroye pujemi buddhang kusumena nena punyena mettena ca hotu mokkam upang milayati yatha idamme kayo tathayati vinasa bhavang akasatha ca bummatang Deva naga mahittiga punyantang anumoditva cirang rakhantu loka sasanang akasatha ca bummata Deva naga mahittiga punyantang anumoditva cirang rakhantu desanang akasatha ca bummata deva naga mahittiga punyantang anumoditva cirang rakhantu mamparanti devo vasatu khalena sasa sampati hetu ca Pito vavantu loko ca raja vavantu dhammiko idang me nyati nang hotu sukita hontu nyatayo idang me nyati nang hotu sukita hontu nyatayo idang me nyati nang hotu Sukita hontu nyatayo imina punya kammena mame bala samagamo satang samagamo hotu yava nibbana pattaya kayena vacca cittena Amadena maya katang acayang kamami bante puripanya tathagata kayena vacca cittena amadena maya katang acayang kamami dhamma sandittika akalika Kayena vacca cittena amadena maya katang acayang kamami sangha supatipanna anuttara
Karaniya matta kusalena yantang santang padang abhisamecha sakko uju ca suju ca suwaco ca semudu anatimani santussako ca subaro ca appakicco ca 𝓢𝓾𝓷𝓭𝓪 Santindriyo ca nipako ca appagabbo kulesu ananugiddo nacakuddang sammacare kinciyena vinyo pare upawadeyong Sukino wa kemino hontu. Sabbe satta bhavantu sukhitatta. Ye ke cipana bhutati. Tasawata warawa anawasesa. Digawa ye mahantawa. Majjima rasa kanukatula. Dittawa yeva aditta. Ye cedure wasanti avidure. Bhutawa sambhave siwa. Sabbe satta bhavantu sukhitatta. Naparo parang nikubbeta. Nati manyeta katta cinang kanci. Biaro sana patika sanya. Nanya manya sedukka micceya. Mata yata niyang puttang. Ayusa eka putta manurakke. Evang pisab bebutesu. Manasang bawaye aparimanang. Metang cesap belokasbing. Manasang bawaye aparimanang. Udang ado catiriyanca. Asang badang awerang asepatang. Tiktang carang nisinova. Sayanova yavatasa vigata mikdo. Etang sating adikteya. Brahma metang viharang idamahu. Ditting ca anupagamma silava. Dasanena sampanno. Kame suvineya gedang. Nahi jatu gabbaseyang punaretiti. Etena satya wajjena. Sotite hotu sabbada. Etena satya wajjena. Sotite hotu sabbada. Etena satya wajjena. Sotite hotu sabbada. By this declaration of the truth, may you be safe at all times. Sadhu, sadhu, sadhu.
Thank you very much, Sister Lily and Brother 𝓤𝓾𝓷𝓭𝓪 for today's puja. Now, this week back with us, we have Brother Ānanda Fong to share on the significance of Navam Poya or Māgha Pūjā. Over to you, Brother Ānanda.
Thank you, Brother Terence. Let me share screen. As part of the festivities, may I wish all who are attending Happy Chinese New Year. This being the last day also. Let me start with the short puja. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. As announced by Brother Terence, today's topic is on the significance of the Navam Poya. Now, the story actually starts with the Buddha after having what they call taught the first sermon in 𝓤𝓾𝓷𝓭𝓪, which is indicated by my cursor at 𝓤𝓾 with this green arrow. And after setting off the first 60 arahats, he actually declared to the 60 arahats that he would journey down to 𝓤𝓷𝓲𝓼, which is the bottom right of the screen. 𝓤𝓷𝓲𝓼, where he met up with the three Kasyapa brothers and their disciples. And he managed to convert them. There were 1,000 over disciples plus their three teachers. And later on, after that, he journeyed towards Rajagaha in fulfillment of his earlier promise as ascetic coterminor to King Bimbisara. And this whole situation of the Navam Poya and Māgha Pūjā talks about this encounter with King Bimbisara, which I touched on in the last sharing, and more particularly the assembly of the occasion for the Navam Poya itself. Now, overall, the significance marks an event occurring at 𝓤𝓷𝓲𝓼𝓷, Velu meaning bamboo, Vana meaning grove, near Rajagaha or present-day Rajgir in northern India. And this occurred 10 months after the enlightenment of the Buddha. So it's quite soon after. Now, some clarifications. Note 1, Poya. Poya actually is a singular term. The language used in Sri Lanka is a name given to the lunar monthly Buddhist full moon, Oposata, in Sri Lanka. So Navam Poya typically falls in February. In the 2023, which is this year, it is on the 5th of February, which is today. In 2024, it will be on the 24th of February, and whilst in 2025, it will be on 12th of February. So some references, URL references are given below. Another aspect is that of Māgha. Māgha basically is the 11th month of the Hindu calendar. So a lot of the calendars used in this region, including Thailand, and what has reference back to its ancient history of the Hindu calendar. And it typically corresponds to January and February of the Gregorian calendar, which is the calendar we use in the modern world today. Now, Māgha Purnima means Purnima means full moon. The Māgha Purnima in 2023, according to the Hindu calendar, falls on 5th February. Now, on a slightly variation, note 3 indicates that the Māgha Pūjā, and also written as the Māgha Pūjā Day, is the second most important Buddhist festival after Vesak, celebrated on the full moon day of the third lunar month. Now, you must not confuse when you say lunar month to the Chinese lunar month, because we are talking about other calendars now. So other nations, Cambodia, Laos, Thailand, Sri Lanka, that their third lunar month may be different from the Chinese lunar months. So you cannot assume that is the case. So, and on the full moon day of Tabao in Myanmar. So in 2023, it is on 6th of March, while in 2024, it is on 24th of February. So apparently there is a difference. Somehow the Māgha of the Hindu calendar has changed with respect to the Thai calendar over to the March period. Whereas in the Hindu and also the Poya in Sri Lanka, the Poya celebrating the same event is actually held today, whereas the Thai will celebrate it 1 month later on 6th of March. So what happened? So the significance is that a meeting was held in the afternoon that had 4 characteristics known as the Jatu meaning 4, Rangasa Nipata, in which 1,250 disciples came to see the Buddha that evening without being summoned. So there was no request by the Buddha for them to come, but they were there. So these were mostly these pupils or disciples from the Buddha's recently converted disciples, such as the 3 Kasyapa brothers, which in previous sharings in previous months I've already talked about, and their 1,000 disciples, and the monks newly converted Venerable Sariputta and Moggallana. So all of them were arahats, and all had been ordained by the Buddha himself, and therefore were his direct spiritual descendants. So, and this occurred on the full moon day of the third lunar month. So these are the 4 principal characteristics of the Navam Poya that happened today, many centuries back. Now, the following slides will dwell on some aspects of the Kasyapa brothers, just a reminder, just a brief reminder, and some aspects about the conversion of Upatissa to later become Venerable Sariputta, and Kolita who later became Venerable Moggallana. Now, this recapping the first vasa, well, the Buddha sent off the first 60 aras, as I mentioned, and this quote is from the Vinaya Pitaka, the Mahavagga in the Vinaya Pitaka. And the Buddha, after having these first 60 aras, he mentioned to them, go monks on tour for the benefit of the common folk, the happiness of the common folk, out of compassion for the world, the welfare, the benefit, the happiness of gods and human beings. So with this, he sent off the first 60 arahats in different directions, and the statement ... as indicated, the Buddha revealed that he would journey to 𝓤𝓷𝓲𝓷𝓷. And it is here where he met up with the 𝓤𝓷𝓲𝓷𝓿 Kasyapa. 𝓤𝓷𝓲𝓷 Kasyapa was the elder brother. The Kasyapa brothers, 𝓤𝓷𝓲𝓷, Nadi, and Gaya Kasyapa, were teachers of, amongst them, 1,000 matted hair ascetics. They were fire worshippers. And the Buddha journeyed to 𝓤𝓷𝓲𝓷 and met up with the elder brother, 𝓤𝓷𝓲𝓷 Kasyapa, who had 500 disciples under him. And the Buddha, when on first meeting with 𝓤𝓷𝓲𝓷 Kasyapa, requested a place to stay. And what they call the kitchen area of the fire shade in the middle of their encampment. Reluctantly, 𝓤𝓷𝓲𝓷 Kasyapa agreed, because he cautioned the Buddha that there was a very fierce, what they call naga, a kind of serpent that can throw out flames, residing in that particular kitchen area, fearing for the Buddha's safety. But the Buddha insisted. So, and after agreeing to allow the Buddha to stay there, the Buddha went in, and this particular passage recorded, documented in the Great Chronicle of the Buddhas, indicated that being unable to contain his anger, in this case, whose anger? The naga. The naga sent out blazing flames, and by developing the jhana of the fire device, an aspect of concentration, deep concentration meditation, kasina, on the fire, the Buddha produced more violent flames. Of course, these flames were designed for show, but not to hurt the naga itself. So the naga could see, but would not be burned by that. Whereas the naga was actually spewing out real flames that could burn any one of us. So the whole fireplace appeared to be blazing because of the enormous flames of the Buddha and the naga. And the leftmost picture just indicates that the fire from inside was spewing out the windows and the doors of that particular fireplace. And all those hermits, they were staying around, surrounding this particular fireplace, could easily see what was going on. So then the hermits, led by their teacher, 𝓤𝓷𝓲𝓷 Kasyapa, gathered round the fireplace, and he said in fear, friends, it is the immensely handsome great monk has been harmed by the naga, or so they assumed. Now, when the night had passed and the morning came, the Buddha, having overwhelmed the naga by his power, without touching or hurting any part of his body, placed him inside the alms bowl and showed him to 𝓤𝓷𝓲𝓷 Kasyapa, saying, "O Kasyapa, this is the naga spoken of by you. I have overwhelmed him by my power." Now, this is the first of the series of 16 over psychic feats which the Buddha exercised during his stay at the fire worshippers' encampment, and to indicate to 𝓤𝓷𝓲𝓷 Kasyapa that the Buddha was accomplished in his own right. And only towards the end, the last psychic feat, did the Buddha manage to convince 𝓤𝓷𝓲𝓷 Kasyapa that 𝓤𝓷𝓲𝓷 Kasyapa, who wrongly thought earlier that he was enlightened and arahat, was actually not enlightened. And only then he decided to be the Buddha's disciple. And this, and also he, what they call, the 500 disciples under him also became the Buddha's disciples initially. And soon after, the other brothers downstream, Nadi and Gaya Kasyapa, together with the other 500 disciples, also became the Buddha's disciples. And soon there were 1,000 disciples, formerly the matted hair ascetics, together with their 3 teachers, so 1,003. And the Buddha taught them the Adita Parayaya Sutta, all in flame sutta. So the sutta starts off with this. At one time, the Buddha was staying near Gaya, on Gaya head, together with 1,000 mendicants. There, the Buddha addressed the mendicants. Mendicants, all is burning. Sabbang bhikkhave adittang. And what is the all that is burning? And the sutta continues. And that this particular aspect was shared in the previous months. And the sutta ends with this particular series of passages. They understood rebirth is ended. The spirit journey has been completed. What had been done has been done. There is no return to any state of existence. That is what the Buddha said. Satisfied, the mendicants were happy with what the Buddha said. And very importantly, and while this discourse was being spoken, the minds of the 1,000 mendicants were freed from defilements by not grasping. So the All Inflamed Sutta actually concluded by mentioning that the 1,000 and together with their teachers, 1,003, actually became arahats, became enlightened at the end of this All Inflamed Sutta. Now, soon after that, the 1,003, together with the Buddha, journeyed towards 𝓤𝓷𝓲𝓷𝓷. Now, by that time, a lot of news had reached King Bimbisara in 𝓤𝓷𝓲𝓷, and he, the king, rounded up a lot of his nobles and the citizenship and journeyed towards the Buddha, towards the encampment where the Buddha was staying, and they met halfway. Now, since there were many Brahmins and many lay people coming together, they were wondering who was the teacher. Was the Buddha the teacher or the Kasyapa brothers? Because Kasyapa brothers were famous in those days. They were staying there for some time and they had a reputation. So that hence the title, the Brahmin's doubt. So when thus seated, these 120,000 wealthy Brahmins felt uncertain and wondered. Does the great monk lead the noble life under the great teacher, Užuvela Kasyapa, as a disciple? Or does Užuvela Kasyapa lead the noble life under the great monk? Now, you must understand that the Buddha was relatively unknown in India. This only happened, the Navam Poya, which is soon to happen, was only 10 months after the Buddha's enlightenment. So it was early days. So knowing what was in the mind of these Brahmins, the Buddha questioned Venerable Užuvela Kasyapa in verse. O dear son Kasyapa, a resident of Užuvela's forest, being a great teacher yourself, instructing the lean hermits because of their austere practices, seeing what fault did you give up fire worship? I ask of you, Kasyapa, what made you abandon fire worship? So the Venerable Užuvela Kasyapa replied to the Buddha in verse also. Glorious Buddha, it is said by sacrificial teachers that through sacrifice one can enjoy the 5 sense pleasures, namely sight, sound, smell, taste, and touch, as well as womenfolk, especially the kind of women who resemble the tiger, preying and devouring by means of its sensuality like claws. Seeing and knowing well that the sense pleasures and women serve only as defilements of the 5 aggregates, I no longer enjoy offering sacrifices. I no longer take delight in daily worship of fire worship. And the Buddha then asked him again in verse, Dear son Kasyapa, if your heart finds no delight in the 5 sense pleasures of sight, sound, smell, taste, and touch, and in women, what sense object in this world of devas and humans delights you? Answer me that, Kasyapa. And the Venerable Užuvela Kasyapa replied in verse, Glorious Buddha, because I have distinctly perceived Nibbana, which was the characteristic of peace, free from the 4 attachments, which is not subject to change, being free from birth, old age, and death, and which is forever free from lust of life and attachment to existence. I no longer enjoy offering sacrifices. I no longer take delight in daily practice of fire worship. Having given this reply, in order to make it known that he himself was a disciple of the Buddha, the Venerable Užuvela Kasyapa rose from his seat, arranged his robe on the shoulder, prostrated himself with his head at the feet of the Buddha, saying, "Glorious Buddha, you, the exalted Buddha, are my teacher. I am a disciple of yours." Then he rose to the sky, first up to the height of a palm tree. Descending from it, he made obeisance to the Buddha. Then he rose up to the height of 2 palm trees in his second display, and subsequently to the height of 3 palm trees in his third attempt, and so on. So having observed miracles, many of the wealthy Brahmins acclaim, saying in praise of the qualities of the Buddha, "Oh, how mighty and powerful the Buddha is." Even the hermit teacher, 𝓤𝓷𝓲𝓼𝓷𝓷, whose wrong view was so strong and firm, and who believed himself to be an arahat, has been tamed by the Buddha by destroying the net of his wrong views. Hearing the words of praise being spoken by the Brahmins, the Buddha addressed them, "O Brahmins, taming this 𝓤𝓷𝓲𝓼𝓷 when I have achieved this 𝓢𝓾𝓷𝓭𝓪 𝓟𝓾 is really not so wonderful. In a former existence as a bodhisattva," that means one who is striving for enlightenment, "not yet free from mental defilements, when I was a Brahma named Narada, I had destroyed the net of wrong views of King Agandi, who is 𝓤𝓷𝓲𝓼𝓷 now." At the request of the Brahmin audience, the Buddha recounted to them the story of Maha-Narada-Kasyapa. The story of Maha-Narada-Kasyapa may be read in detail in the 10 great Jatakas. In this case, Jataka number 544 for those interested. And the Buddha proceeded with the very important Anupubbhikata, so translated as gradual discourse, gradual instruction, progressive instruction, or step-by-step thought. This is the way the Buddha approached lay people when he sought to teach them certain aspects. So when the Buddha became aware through his Cetopariya Abhinya that their minds have now been free from doubt, he taught the audience of 120,000 monks and Brahmins headed by King Bimbisara the course of moral practice leading to the realization of the path and fruits, Māgha. So he taught Dana-kata, Sila-kata, Saga-kata, and the discourse on the good path and the line of conduct for the realization of Māgha and Nibbana, as well as Kamanang Adina-vakata, together with Nekkhamma Adinsamsa-kata in the progressive manner. So this is the way the Buddha approached, step by step. Now, thereafter, when the Buddha knew that the minds of King Bimbisara and the 120,000 Brahmins had become firm and imperturbable, soft, malleable, free from hindrances, eager, gladdened, purified, and pellucid, he taught the Dhamma, which was originally discovered by him, the Four Noble Truths. The 120,000 Brahmins headed by King Bimbisara became established in Sotapattipala. So the remaining 10,000 Brahmins became lay devotees, were established in the threefold refuge. So not everybody present became Sotapans, but a large portion of them, and 10,000 Brahmins were established in the threefold refuge. Now, King Bimbisara's 5 aspirations. Now, Bimbisara, the king of Magadha, who had now become a Sotapanna, addressed the Buddha. "Lord, formerly when I was a young prince, I had 5 aspirations. Now they are fulfilled. Lord, when I was a young prince, I wished, if only the people of Magadha anointed me as a king. Glorious Buddha, this was my first aspiration, and it has now been fulfilled. If only the homage-worthy Buddha would come to his kingdom when he became king. Glorious Buddha, this was my second aspiration, and it has now been fulfilled too. If only I could pay homage and do honor to that Buddha when he visited my kingdom. Glorious Buddha, this is my third aspiration, and it has now been fulfilled too. If only the Buddha who visited my kingdom taught me the Dhamma, which would lead to Nibbana. Glorious Buddha, this was my fourth aspiration, and it has now been fulfilled too. Lord, when I was a young prince, I wished if only I might thoroughly understand Dhamma taught by the Buddha. Glorious Buddha, this way my fifth aspiration, and that too has now been fulfilled too. So glorious Buddha, it is indeed very delectable to cite worldly examples, just as one turns up what lies upside down, just as one holds up a lamp in the darkness for those with eyes to see various visible objects. Even so was the Venerable Buddha revealed the Dhamma to me in many ways. So, glorious Buddha, I take refuge in the Buddha, in the Dhamma, in the Sangha. Glorious Buddha, may you take me as a lay disciple, established in the threefold refuge from now on till the end of my life. Glorious Buddha, in order that I might gain merit, may you kindly accept my invitation to meal together with the community of bhikkhus. So on thus being invited, the Buddha remained silent, signifying his acceptance of the Buddha's invitation to the morning meal. So the story continues in another sharing later in later months. Now, soon after, King Bibisara decided to that the Veluvana, the bamboo grove, notice the word is a compound word, Velu meaning bamboo, Vana means grove, and notice at the back, Arama. Arama means a monastery. So the King Bibisara actually offered Veluvana, the bamboo grove, which was later developed into an Arama, a monastery. So the bamboo grove became a monastery. So also known as the sanctuary of squirrels, was suitable accommodation and offered it to the Buddha and the Sangha. He built a storied house and attendants helped in the maintenance of the residence. And the Buddha spent 6 rainy retreats at this particular monastery. Bottom are just 2 pictures in which if you do go on pilgrimage, you can see on the bottom left, the arch leading, entering the monastery or the grove. And on bottom right, you can see a location where the Buddha can take his bath and so on. And even in this, King Asoka also built some artwork in Sanchi, in which depicts King Bibisara's visits to the bamboo garden in Rajagaha. Now, coming over to Venerable Sariputta, whose lay name was Upatissa. And for those who are not familiar, Ayasma means venerable. Now, the early days of Upatissa, so there were 2 Brahmanical villages in India called Upatissa and Kolita, which lay not far from the city of Rajagaha. The 2 families were closely connected, having been friends with one another for 7 generations. So at Rajagaha was an annual event called the Hilltop Festival, and these 2 good friends, Upatissa and Kolita, they witnessed the celebrations with occasions for laughter and excitement. They went on the 2nd day, then a 3rd day, where they could no longer laugh and get excited anymore. So the thoughts arose in these 2. What is there to look at here? Before these people have reached 100 years, they will all have come to death. What we ought to do is to seek for a teaching of deliverance. So these were the thoughts of the 2 young men. They realized that those seeking a teaching of deliverance had to leave home and become ascetics. So at that time, there lived in Rajagaha an ascetic of the set of wanderers, Paribhajaka, called Sanjaya. Now, incidentally, during the time of the Buddha, there were 6 contemporary teachers, that means famous teachers. One of them was Sanjaya. Now, in this case, who had a great following of pupils, and they received ordination from Sanjaya. Now, within a short time, the 2 friends had learned Sanjaya's entire doctrine, and they asked him, "Master, does your doctrine go so far only, or is there something beyond?" And Sanjaya replied, "So far only it goes, you know all." So hearing this, they thought to themselves, if that is the case, it is useless to continue the holy life under Sanjaya. They then went in search and later split up to widen their search, promising to share their findings to whoever found deliverance. So sometime after their agreement, the Blessed One, whom they have yet to meet, delivered the 𝓷𝓷𝓷𝓷 Sutta, the All on Fire sermon, at the Gaya Peak, and later proceeded to 𝓤𝓾𝓷𝓭𝓪 to teach King Bimbisara. Now, indication as had been promised earlier. Now, promised earlier means when the Buddha was ascetic Gautama, newly renounced and journeyed, was walking in the streets of 𝓤𝓾𝓷 when King Bimbisara saw him. Now, this portion is quite important. Now, then Venerable Āsāji, one of the first 5 disciples whom the Buddha taught the first sermon at the Deer Park, now having gone for alms in 𝓤𝓾𝓷, left, taking his alms. Then Upatissa, the wanderer, approached him and on arrival exchanged courteous greetings with him. After an exchange of friendly greetings and courtesies, he stood to one side. As he was standing there, he said, "Bright are your faculties, my friend, pure your complexion and clear. On whose account have you gone forth? Or who is your teacher? Or in whose Dhamma do you delight?" Now, it's interesting to see that Venerable Āsāji, being one of the first 5 ascetics whom the Buddha taught the first sermon, was by that time already an Arahat. And it's interesting that in many accounts, in other suttas and stories, there's an indication that Arahats tend to have bright faculties, pure complexion, and clear. I'm sure Upatissa has seen many commoners walking around the streets in India, but among them, Āsāji stood out. Why? His faculties were bright, complexion clear. So there's some aspects to being an Arahat that changes how you look compared to other people around. So there is, my friend, the great contemplative, Venerable Āsāji said, a son of the Sakyas, gone forth from a Sakyan family. I have gone forth on account of that Blessed One. That Blessed One is my teacher, and it's in that Blessed One's Dhamma that I delight. Now, but what is your teacher's teaching? What does he proclaim? I knew, my friend, Venerable Āsāji said, not long gone forth, only recently gone to this Dhamma Vinaya, Dhamma and discipline. I cannot explain the Dhamma in detail, but I will tell you the gist in brief. Then Sariputta, the wanderer, spoke thus to Venerable Āsāji. Speak a little or a lot, but tell me just the gist. The gist is what I want. What use is a lot of verbosity. Then Venerable Āsāji gave this Dhamma exposition to Sariputta, the wanderer. Ye Dhamma hetu papava, te sang hitung tathagato aha, te sancha yo nirodo, evang vadi maha samanoti. Whatever phenomena arise from cause, and their cessation, such is the teaching of the Tathagata, the great contemplative. Now, this particular statement is recorded in the Panja Vaggiya Kata of the Vinaya Pitaka. Now, this particular, the Pali version is well known historically because in many excavations in India and other Buddhist countries in Indochina and so on, archaeologists will know that the kingdom previously was a Buddhist kingdom because they actually inscribed on the walls, on stones and pillars, this particular Pali verse, which clearly indicate that that was a Buddhist kingdom. So the result of Upatissa hearing this, as he heard this, the Dhamma exposition, there arose the dustless, stainless Dhamma. Whatever is subject to origination is all subject to cessation. So thus, Upatissa became a Sotapan, attained the first stage of sainthood. Now then Sariputta, as agreed, or Upatissa, the wanderer, went to 𝓤𝓷𝓲, the wanderer. Now, and 𝓤𝓷𝓲, the wanderer, saw him coming from afar, and on seeing him said, bright are your faculties, my friend, pure your complexion and clear. Could it be that you have attained the deathless? Now, it's interesting to note that 𝓤𝓷𝓲𝓷𝓷, who later became 𝓤𝓷𝓲𝓼, was not an arahat yet, only attained the first stage of sainthood, Sotapan, and yet his faculties are bright. And definitely 𝓤𝓷𝓲 knows him very well. They were good buddies from young, and he look at him and say, "Wow, bright your faculties. Complexion is pure and clear." So definitely, even as Sotapan, your faculties and complexion changes. So to this question by 𝓤𝓷𝓲, 𝓤𝓷𝓲 said, "Yes, my friend, I've attained the deathless." But how, friend, did you attain the deathless? And 𝓤𝓷𝓲 narrated the story. "Just now, friend, I saw Venerable Asaji going for alms in Rajagaha," and so on. He narrated the whole story together with the teaching taught, the summarized teaching by Venerable Asaji. And of course, 𝓤𝓷𝓲 attained the first stage of sainthood. Then these two, the 𝓤𝓷𝓲 and 𝓤𝓷𝓲, decided to seek out the Buddha. But en route towards the Buddha, they decided to stop by their former teacher, Sanjaya, and encourage him to come together to see the Buddha, which Sanjaya declined. Now, the master then was preaching the Dhamma, and when the Blessed One saw the two coming, he addressed the monks. "These two friends, 𝓤𝓷𝓲 and 𝓤𝓷𝓲, who are now coming, will be two excellent disciples to me, a blessed pair," the Buddha said. Having approached, the friends saluted the Blessed One reverentially and sat down at one side. When they were seated, they spoke to the Blessed One, saying, "May we obtain, O Lord, the ordination of the going forth under the Blessed One. May we obtain the higher ordination." So, and the Blessed One said, "Etta bhikkhave, come, O bhikkhus. So well proclaimed is the Dhamma. Now live the life of purity to make an end of suffering. This alone serve as the ordination of these venerable ones." So upon ordination, 𝓤𝓷𝓲 became known as Venerable 𝓤𝓷𝓲𝓼. Sari and Putta. Putta means son of. So 𝓤𝓷𝓲𝓼 means son of his mother, son of Sari, the name of his mother. While 𝓤𝓷𝓲 became Māgha. So later, of course, Venerable 𝓤𝓷𝓲𝓼 was later appointed to the prestigious position of Dhammasena-dipati, and Venerable Māgha to Dhamma Purohita. Now, as most Buddhists would be familiar, Venerable 𝓤𝓷𝓲𝓼 is second only to the Buddha in terms of accomplishment in wisdom, whereas Venerable Māgha was accomplished in the psychic feats, aspects of mental concentration. So according to the 𝓤𝓷𝓲𝓪 Sutta, Venerable 𝓤𝓷𝓲𝓼 was fanning the Buddha while listening to him, teaching the Dhamma to Venerable 𝓤𝓷𝓲𝓼's nephew, who was a wandering ascetic, when full and complete awakening dawned thus. Now at the time, Venerable 𝓤𝓷𝓲𝓼 was standing behind the Buddha fanning him. Then the thought, it seems the Buddha speaks of giving up and letting go of all these things through direct knowledge. Reflecting like this, Venerable 𝓤𝓷𝓲𝓼's mind was free from the defilements by not grasping. So that was Venerable 𝓤𝓷𝓲𝓼 from Sotapan became an arahat on indirectly listening to the Buddha while he was fanning the Buddha. So Venerable 𝓤𝓷𝓲𝓼 attained sainthood by quick penetration within 2 weeks of his ordination, but his progress was smooth. Venerable Māgha had advanced to sainthood more speedily than 𝓤𝓷𝓲𝓼 because the Buddha directed and inspired him personally and intensively. But 𝓤𝓷𝓲𝓼 was superior to him in regard to the independence of his progress. Now, a little bit more information about 𝓤𝓷𝓲, who later became Ayasma Moggallana. Now, Venerable Moggallana went into solitude and chose as his abode the forest near the village of Kalavalaputta in Magadha. With great zeal, he meditated there while sitting or walking up and down. But in these efforts, he was often overcome by sleepiness. Most of us in who have encountered meditation would know this as sloth and torpor, very what they call troublesome hindrance to meditators. The Buddha did not lose sight of him. So with his supernovel vision, he perceived the difficulties of the new monk, and with his psychic power appeared before Moggallana. So when Moggallana saw the master standing before him, a good part of his fatigue had already vanished. Now the Buddha asked him, "Are you nodding, Moggallana? Are you nodding?" And Moggallana admitted, "Yes, Lord." So the rest of how the Buddha, gave a tutorial or teaching to Moggallana as to how to overcome sleepiness or sloth and torpor. This is recorded in the sutta called Nodding, 𝓤𝓾𝓷𝓭𝓪 Sutta, in the Ānanda Nikaya Book of 7. So those interested can check out after this talk. So after the Awakened One had instructed him on the overcoming of sleepiness and the avoidance of excitement, Moggallana asked the following question: "In what way, O Lord, can it be briefly explained how a monk becomes liberated by elimination of craving? How he becomes one who has reached the final end and the final security from bondage, the final holy life, the final consummation, and is foremost among gods and men?" And herein, Moggallana, a monk has learned this: no thing is fit to be clung to. When a monk has learned that no thing is fit to be clung to, he fully knows everything. By fully knowing everything, he fully comprehends everything. When fully comprehending everything, and so on, aided by the master's instruction, he could free himself from these last factors and attain to perfect deliverance of mind and deliverance by wisdom in all their fullness and depth. Thus, the Venerable Moggallana had become one of the saints. He admitted he could well say about himself that, supported by the master, a disciple may obtain the great state of superknowledge. So Moggallana, as he later said, attained sainthood by quick penetration, that is, in 1 week, but his progress was difficult, requiring the helpful prompting of the master. Now back to Navam Poya. This is what I showed earlier, and this occurred in the bamboo grove near Rajagaha 10 months after the Buddha's enlightenment. And you will note notes 1, 2, and 3 on Poya on the Hindu calendar of Māgha, and Māgha Pūjā is already shared earlier. And Navam Poya, in this particular, or Māgha Pūjā, was essentially a meeting held in the afternoon, which had 4 characteristics. And these 1,250 disciples came to see the Buddha, which was not pre-arranged. And all these were the Buddha's disciples. All of them were arahats, and they were ordained by the Buddha himself. And this was on the full moon day of the 3rd lunar month. Now, because of these 4 factors, Navam Poya or Māgha Pūjā is also known as the Fourfold Assembly Day. On this occasion, the Buddha taught those arahats a summary of Buddhism called the Ovada Patimokkha. Patimokkha being the rules of conduct, Ovada being advice or exhortation. Now, this to note that during the early days, in fact, this was well within the 10 months after the Buddha's enlightenment. Now, one has to note that for the first 20 years, there was no recorded rules of conduct or vinaya for the Bhikkhu Sangha or Bhikkhu or Bhikkhuni Sangha. No, really documented. So the conventional 227 precepts observed by a Bhikkhu was not recorded during the first 20 years. Only after that, through the encouragement of Venerable Sariputta, that only then was the Vinaya clearly established. So this was only well within the first year, and the Buddha gave this as an overall guiding principle of conduct for all monastics. In this case, to the arahats, who actually do not need all these rules of conduct because they have done what must be done. So in these three principles were given, these principles were as documented in Dhammapada verse 184, 183, and 185, which follows. Dhammapada verse 184, enduring patience is the highest austerity. Nibbana is supreme, said the Buddha. He is not a true monk who harms another, nor a true renunciate who oppresses others. Now, this Dhammapada verse is very important, especially the last portion of this. He is not a true monk who harms another, nor a true renunciate who oppresses others. Then sometimes we may come across stories or accusations from various parties that the Buddhist monks were giving Dhamma talks or giving talks that encourage certain groups of the community to rise up and fight against another community, what some might call racial riots and stuff like that. So clearly, in Dhammapada verse 184 at the bottom, he is not a true monk who harms another, not a true renunciate who oppresses others. So if it is true that certain monastics, Buddhist monastics or Sangha members were to encourage other monks or even lay people to rise up and cause trouble, cause hurt to other beings, other communities, clearly from the Buddha's point of view, those are not true monks. And of course, this Dhammapada verse 183 is well known. Avoid all evil, do good, purify your mind. This is the teaching of the Buddhas. So we have all heard of this particular Dhammapada verse many times before. And the last advice in this Ovada Patimokkha in Dhammapada verse 185, not despising, not harming, restraint according to the code of monastic discipline, moderation in food, dwelling in solitude, devotion to meditation. This is the teaching of the Buddhas. So clearly, the Patimokkha emphasizes a lot of aspects about not harming and so on, and not despising. And the mode of conduct, these were the first Vinaya or Patimokkha or rules of conduct for monastics, taught by the Buddha 10 months after his enlightenment to his students. So this particular poster just summarizes the Ovada Patimokkha, in which I just shared. So that's the end of this morning's sharing. Saddhammo 𝓤𝓷𝓷𝓷. May the good doctrine long endure. Sabbe satta sukhi hontu. May all beings be happy. And this today, wishing you love and affinity. Happy Cap Gome, the 15th day after the new moon. This is the ending of the New Year celebration today. Back to you, Brother Terence.
Thank you very much, Brother Ānanda, for today's nice sharing. Now, let's compose our minds as we dedicate this marriage to all beings, seen or unseen, on this full moon day. Akasatha ca Bhummata Devanaga Mahittika Punyang Tang Anumoditva Chiram Rakkantu Loka Sasanang Ettavata Amhehi Sampadang Punya Sampadang Sabbe Deva Sabbe Bhuta Sabbe Sattha Numodantu Sabba Sampatti Siddhya Idang me nyati nang hotu sukita hontu nyatayo. Idang me nyati nang hotu sukita hontu nyatayo. Idang me nyati nang hotu sukita hontu nyatayo. And aspirations. Imina punya kammena mame bala samagamo Satang samagamo hotu yava nibbana patiya. Sadhu, sadhu, sadhu. Thank you everyone for watching and staying back. For other videos, please visit the links below. Bye bye for now. See you all next week.